I might roll myself after this one section. That's big, Pete.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and get started. And I'll slip in here real quick and just so that I can make a couple quick announcements and introduce you. So, okay, great. So we're all ready to go ahead and get started here. So, just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Charlene Randall, Director of Business Development here at L&E Research. And I just wanted to welcome all of you here today that were able to attend in person. If you haven't gotten a chance to visit our office here before in Charlotte, North Carolina, by all means, we'll give you the grand tour. We've got a number of our staff members that are here today. So we've got our Client Services Manager, Kate Johnson. We've got a couple members of our project management team, as well as some of our client services representatives here. So always happy to do that. I would also like to give a good shout out to those who are joining us via video streaming. L&E Research has offered complimentary live video streaming, and so we just want to welcome all of you who are able to join us that way as well. We actually have a chat feature, so if you have questions throughout, we will be taking questions. Lindsay, one of our staff members, is going to be monitoring that. So if questions come up throughout the session, we'll go ahead and address those. We'll also allow about 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the session of our workshop to take some more questions and answers if there are any. If we have more questions than time permits, we will be sure to answer those questions and get those out to you at a later date. I just wanted to also, a couple quick things. I wanted to tell you that our next workshop coming is going to be on July the 18th. L&E Research does complimentary workshops periodically, and our next one is on taste of sensory. It's actually going to take place at one of our St. Louis facilities, and it's actually the one that has the test kitchen in it. It'll be very hands-on. Our speaker is going to be Judy Heilman, and Judy is with 4 Sense Plus One, and we're looking forward to that. As with this workshop, we will be video streaming that as well. So if you're unable to attend in person, just keep your eyes and ears open. We'll be getting more information out, and you can certainly sign up online for that as well. We also just wanted to be sure that you knew, if you haven't already heard the news yet, that we have L&E Research has expanded once again to our headquarters in Raleigh, North Carolina, and our facilities in Tampa, Florida, St. Louis, Missouri, and again here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We just opened an office in Cincinnati, Ohio. So we hope that we get a chance to visit us there as well. Also, we are continuing to expand thanks to our clients. We are continuing to grow and continuing to expand. We want to be able to offer you lots of market options, and so we are going to be expanding again. So again, just keep your eyes and ears open for more information about that. Without further delay, I wanted to just tell you, and one more thing, I wanted to tell you that at the end of the session, we're going to have 2 drawings for 2 $50 Amazon gift cards. We will have, doorbell's off. Okay, so we're going to have 1 drawing for those of you that are here in person. We'll have a second drawing for those of you who are joining us by video streaming. So those of you who are here in person, we should already have collected business cards. If not, we'll pass that around. But for those of you who are attending by video streaming, we already have your names when you registered, and so that information is there in the drawing box already ready to go. We will go ahead and get started in just a minute, and I just wanted to introduce you to our guest speaker, Jake Stauch of NeuroSpire. Jake is the CEO and founder of NeuroSpire, a world leader in the application of brain imaging technology to media and marketing testing. Prior to starting NeuroSpire, Jake was actually a researcher at Duke University Center for Cognitive Neuroscience, where he used EEG technology to investigate neuroeconomics of decisions under time pressure, as well as attentional biasing effects of marketing-related stimulus. He studied neurobiology and economics at Duke, and as if that wasn't enough, while he was there, he also founded InCube, which is a renowned accelerator program for student entrepreneurs. Jake is certainly an entrepreneur himself, not surprising to me at all. He actually scored a perfect SAT score while fighting bronchitis. Not bad. So we are happy that NeuroSpire has actually partnered with L&E Research so that we can offer our clients another marketing option for their marketing research toolkit, and that is Neuromarketing. So with that, Jake and his team, actually Jake has 2 members of his team here. We've got Jeroen Kool is here and Morgan Craig. And so Jake, without further delay, I'd like to turn the floor over to you, and thank you so much, all of you, for being here.
Thank you so much, Charlene. That was very kind. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to tell you a little bit about neuromarketing. Who here has heard the term neuromarketing before? Nobody? Nobody? Anybody want to come up here and explain to me what neuromarketing is?
You got this.
Well, so that is kind of a big problem, and neuromarketing is one of the fastest growing fields in the market research industry, and yet most people are still relatively unfamiliar with the concept of neuromarketing and how it's used and where the science comes from. So over the course of the presentation, I'll be reviewing all the major neuromarketing methods and tell you a little bit about what we do and what we do that's different, and give you some examples of how it works in action, and maybe even put a headset on one of these guys so you can see how it works. So first, what is neuromarketing? In general, neuromarketing is the application of brain activity measures towards marketing media research. So using various methods, we're actually going to look at what's happening at the subconscious level and apply that to marketing testing, communications testing, as a way of getting beyond traditional research methods that almost universally rely on self-report in some way. So if we're talking surveys or focus groups, you're relying on people to actually verbalize what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and that's very difficult to do for 2 main reasons. One is that you're not always aware of how you feel about something. You could be watching a commercial, and you can't really say at second 6, how do I feel about that? It's very difficult to do that. And even if you are perfectly aware of how you're feeling, sometimes you don't always communicate that very well. You are biased by the people around you, by the moderator, by the setting, by the time of day, by how much coffee you had to drink, all these factors that affect what you do say and what you're willing to say. So to illustrate kind of why we need neuromarketing, I'm just going to show you a quick video. So we have a there we go.
Here in Austin, there are over 2,000 bands playing South by Southwest this year, which I think is all of them. I think every band is here. You know, people who come to music festivals pride themselves on knowing who the new acts are, even if they don't actually know who the new acts are. So we sent a camera crew into the streets of Austin to ask South by attendees about bands that do not exist. Again, these are not real bands. We made them all up, but that didn't stop people from telling us how much they like them in a special South by Southwest edition of Live Witness News.
The big buzz on the street when a lot of people have been talking to us about this here on the scene at South by Southwest is contact dermatitis. Do you think that he has what it takes to really make it into the big time?
Absolutely. Hopefully to go all the way.
Do you think contact dermatitis is just going to be like a rash that spreads across the U.S. or?
Hopefully it'll be something that we can all get into, and then next thing you know, just have a good time.
Do you think Neil Patrick Harassment has a chance of breaking out into the mainstream, or? I definitely think so. They have a pretty good sound, so I like their music a lot. It's very entertaining. Are they as good as the sort of very controversial band like the Bruce Jenner? They're right on point with them. I think they have a lot of working up to do. I mean, they have a great following, so I think they can make it up to that point, so. Some great female hip-hop artists and female DJs. What do you think about all the amazing success Heavy Flow is having? Awesome. I mean, women. What do you love about DJ Heavy Flow? It's badass. on, but from what I've heard, like, everybody's already like, YouTube this, YouTube that. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. Why not?
How about DJ Costco?
I have heard that.
Yeah. What do you like about DJ Costco's
Well, at
sound?
first I was just kind of like, because it's a store name, and I was like, I have to check out, somebody that's named after that. It's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I enjoyed it.
What do you think about this band, Straight Outta Park Slope, Hannah and the Baby Bjorn?
I like the band, very versatile, so, they give me something to look forward to.
What do you think of the country rap artist, Willie Nelson Mandela? Are you a fan of his sound?
To be honest, not too much. I heard it, but I'm not really into it.
What have you heard about Tanya and the Hardings? Have you heard that they're kind of marketing or?
Yeah, and a lot of men have been talking about them, saying that they're really impressed with them. They're not usually fans of female groups, but that they really made a statement, so it's been really good.
They have that kind of sexy but dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. So they can hold their own as a musician. Yeah, so.
What do you think of the Tanya and the Hardings album, Sorry About That, Nancy?
I really like it. I've only heard two of it, but it's really good. Yeah, I really like it. I'd really like to see them live.
What's your name and where are you from?
Jonathan, and I'm from Montreal.
Welcome to America, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Are you excited? Oh yeah, that's where DJ Cornmeal is from.
Yes, same here. Yes.
You enjoy the band I'm Not Done With The Salad?
Yeah.
What do you think of them?
I think they're quirky. I think they're a great fit for an Austin festival, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. What's your favorite song from I'm Not Done With The Salad? I'm Not Tipping or Did It Look Like I Was Finished?
Probably I'm not tipping more than any of the others. I mean, it's hard not to love.
Are you very excited about Daenerys Targaryen and the Dragon Pony?
Yes, to be honest, yes. I mean, I try to mix in with any type.
To be honest, yes.
I think that's enough. We get the idea. So, kind of scary to think about it. That's what you get when you get self-report. It's pretty detailed answers, right? People are generating out of nowhere, and like they kept adding to the end. To be perfectly honest, is what I think. So, this is really the issue with self-report is that you can really get really creative responses that have nothing to do with reality, nothing to do with what you're trying to get at. And we try to avoid that by not asking people to tell us anything, but to actually measure their responses without asking them a single thing. So we'll go on to how do we do it? So what are the ways that we actually go about collecting this kind of data? There's really 4 different methodologies for neuromarketing. There's these indirect methodologies. So these are not actually measuring brain activity, but measuring things that are closely linked to brain activity, and they're still subconscious measures that are not relying on self-report. So facial coding, pretty self-explanatory, actually looking at people's facial expressions and how they change when they're watching something, because people, in theory, have less control over their facial expressions than their verbalized answers. Biometrics is looking at heart rate, skin conductance, how much somebody's sweating, those things like that. Think of like a polygraph test. So also things people don't have a lot of control over that is going to change in how they respond to things. And then there are the more direct methods. So these are actually looking at functions of the brain. So fMRI, taking those pictures. Anybody had an MRI scan, you kind of get the idea that you could load it into a tube, get pictures of the brain. And EEG, we're actually recording the electrical activity. So we'll cover each of these briefly. Forewarning, we are an EEG company, so I think EEG is the best methodology, and I'll try to be as unbiased as possible as we go through the other ones. So facial coding actually began in the 70s with work by Paul Ekman. He developed a facial action coding system, basically a whole set of different facial expressions that you could watch video and write down all these micro expressions people had in response to something. If you've ever seen the show Lie to Me, it's based on the work of Paul Ekman. Luckily, we don't do the hand coding anymore. We actually automate that with computer software, which has made it much cheaper and more implementable for a lot of these applications. Affectiva is a leader in this space. They're really the main ones that are doing that. They have a partnership with Miller Brown to incorporate it into link testing. Advantages, it's pretty fast. You get about a 1-week turnaround on data. It's pretty scalable, non-invasive. People can do this at home with a webcam, and it's inexpensive at a cost around $2,500 per ad. The main issues that people express to me about facial coding is that they don't really know why they're doing it. So it's a really neat measure, but it really comes down to measures like surprise, disgust, happiness, sadness, smiles, frowns, things like that. And those are things usually that people are aware of and that people are already reporting. So if you see this is the area where somebody smiled, this is where somebody frowned, that's not necessarily giving you a lot more information than what you're getting through Withdrawal and some other methods. You need large sample sizes. If you're not getting over 100, then it's not going to work out. So that can kind of make it difficult from a recruiting perspective if you need a smaller sample or a small limited group. And then you're limited to really only short-form video content. So commercials is pretty much the only thing you can test, and there's not a lot of leeway there. There's also some other things that only recently people have started to express to me, like these tests are usually weighted by the people that have the most expression. So there's almost a sampling bias because you'll have some people that are very expressive, and your entire sample, your entire data set might be dominated by that person's expressions, whereas everybody else that might fit expressionless isn't really generating a lot of activity. There's also been some controversy. A recent, small study, they did facial coding tests with Barbie dolls, and they put the Barbie doll's face in front of the screen, and they actually got different scores. So that was an interesting thing that I saw presented at a conference a couple weeks ago. Biometrics is another big methodology. Leader in this space is Interscope Research, but they use sensors placed on chest and hands, measure skin conductance. Again, that's called the galvanic skin response, and basically when you're physiologically aroused, there's kind of a heightened state of things. Your skin secretes a micro amount of more moisture, and we can detect that with these electrodes that are placed on your skin. So they measure that, also measure heart rate. It's a really good measure of this physiological arousal that, you're more aware of things, you're almost that fight or flight response. The problem here is that, we don't really know what arousal means. We don't know if it's good if somebody's aroused when they see a packaging design or if they see a commercial, because there's different reasons that somebody could feel that way, right? Some researchers suggest that people can only really decide to buy something when they're in a very calm state, and that states of high arousal actually reduce your likelihood of buying because you almost think that there's something wrong. So you can imagine the experience in a grocery store. You're sitting there and you're looking at different options. You don't really buy something that makes your heart beat faster or makes your palms start sweating. And so it's unclear whether that metric is very useful as consistent and good as biometrics are at getting it. Again, moderately priced. You're looking at more costly because it has to be central location testing. It's a little bit invasive because you have to have people take off their clothes and put on this belt. It's usually about $30,000 per study. You can use smaller sample sizes. Usually they use about 60, but the turnaround time is a little bit longer, 3 to 4 weeks. fMRI is another popular methodology in just recent years. It's really, really fascinating technology. So when the theory goes is that when certain areas of your brain are more active, they're probably going to use more glucose, right? They're going to use more energy, more sugar. And so what your body's going to do is it's going to send more blood to that area. And so what we actually do is we measure the flow of oxygenated blood versus deoxygenated blood, so fresh blood versus old blood coming into the system, and we can kind of get a general idea of which areas of the brain are more active than others. So it's really cool. You get these really cool pictures of the brain that show you that this area lights up or this area has more activity than this area. Really fascinating stuff. The main issue with fMRI is obviously these machines are large. The typical machine costs about $6 to $10 million. And so usually, obviously, a company's not going to buy one of these. They're going to have to contract with a hospital. And the rental rates can be $1,000 an hour or more. So a typical study is going to be $60,000 plus. You get longer turnaround time because it takes a lot of man hours to really analyze the data. And the test environment is as pretty unnatural as you can get. You're loading somebody into a metal tube. Anything you have to show them, you actually show them through a series of mirrors that get put on their glasses when they're in the test environment. So it's not. Okay. The good thing about fMRI and why some people is caught on with some groups is that you have this really cool area of the brain called the BMPFC. It stands for ventral medial prefrontal cortex. And all it really means is that there's an area in your brain that is closely linked to value preference. So whenever somebody looks at something that has value, they basically, it's almost the mental currency of your brain. So your brain basically assigns value in this region so that higher activation in this region is associated with you placing higher value on something. So you can track really, really well how much somebody values something by looking at activation in that area. If the study is carefully designed. So that's a really, really powerful metric, and that's why it's caught on in recent years. But you do have to deal with these other drawbacks, which is very costly and very unnatural environment. And probably most exciting is that in recent studies by the ARF, this fMRI is one of the most closely related to advertising effectiveness, is looking at fMRI activity. So if you can do it, it's pretty powerful stuff. But again, it's not a very scalable methodology. With these kind of costs, you can't integrate it easily into your copy testing. So EEG, that brings us to where we are. EEG is one of the oldest technologies on this list, actually, but one of the most powerful. EEG was actually invented in the 1860s, 1870s, when somebody had the bright idea of sticking metal electrodes to people's heads and seeing if they could see something. It really was been refined a great deal. In the 20s, we started doing a lot of stuff with EEG and started to be able to identify certain EEG patterns. Now, technology has advanced quite a bit so that EEG systems have shrunk down to something that looks like this. Connects wirelessly to any computer or tablet. People can wear these. You don't need to use complicated gel or anything. You can actually just squirt some saline solution on these pads, put it on somebody's head, and they're ready to go in usually under 5 minutes. What we're measuring is pretty interesting. So your brain actually has 10 billion of these cells called neurons that communicate with each other. And when large populations of these cells fire in a rhythmic pattern, so imagine your brain just kind of idling and having this rhythmic firing, we can actually detect those patterns at the surface of the skull. So your brain basically, imagine radiating electricity outwards, and we're picking up that electricity. And the most exciting part of that is that there's a measure originally discovered in the 1970s called Prefrontal Asymmetries. So this guy in the 1970s named Richard Davidson, he started to show people pictures of things that would make them happy and things that would make them sad or disgusted or angry or fearful. So all these different emotional pictures. It's an emotional picture system he used. And he said, what does their brain look like when they're seeing these different pictures? And he found that when they're seeing pictures that are positive, they're having more activation in the left side of the brain, the left prefrontal area. When they're seeing these more negative pictures, they're having this right response, this activity in the right prefrontal area. Decades of research later, we fine-tune that, and what we're actually measuring is something called approach versus withdrawal. And a good way to think about it is approach are emotions that make you do something. They motivate you towards something. They're motivating emotions. Many times they're happy emotions, but it's not really the same as happiness. It's things that drive you to action, whereas withdrawal is things that push you away. So that's fear, that's sadness, that's those things that disgust, the things that push you away. And that seems to be what this prefrontal asymmetry is actually measuring, which is really, really powerful stuff, because when you make a purchase decision, that's really the system that's being recruited, is that approach versus withdrawal. Am I going to be drawn towards this or pushed away from it? And it makes sense if you're in a grocery store. Again, you're looking at wine labels. You're not going to buy the one that makes you smile, right? There's a lot of labels that might make you smile. That's not what drives a purchase decision, is how happy a label makes you. You are drawn to some labels. You're drawn to some packaging design, and it's not a smile, it's not a frown, it's not as simple as that, and it's not an emotion that we can communicate effectively, but it's a very powerful motivating thing. You have this approach response. So this is a measure that's been linked to purchase behavior. They've done tests that link it to box office results. You can show somebody a trailer, and you can get a rough estimate of how that film will do at the box office later on, based on how much of their emotions are these approach emotions, things that draw you in. So it's a very powerful metric. It's got a lot of interesting side notes. People, I read a recent study that said parachuters, right, when they're in the plane on the way, they get this right activation, this fear, this anxiety that's popping up. And as they go along, as they get closer and closer to the jump, what happens is their left side starts to take over, and their left side basically dampens that down and pushes down those anxieties and those fears, and it says, we're going to do this. And so that that approach withdrawal system is very interesting. That's an extreme example, but the same kind of things happen when you're evaluating a product, you're evaluating a brand, is you have all these negatives, these fears, these anxieties, these, buyer's guilt, and then you have another side of your brain that kind of shuts that down and eventually allows you to proceed with the decision. So it's a really interesting metric, and that's really what we focus on. EEG is far and away the most common neuromarketing methodology. It was pioneered by Neurofocus originally, that is now powered of Nielsen. Stan's research, Neurons Inc., and NeuroSpire, very, very common. There's probably been over 1 million neuromarketing studies done in the past 10 years. As I said before, you get really good metric with prefrontal asymmetry. You're reliable at small sample sizes, only 20 to 40. And it's relatively moderately priced at $25,000 a study on average between all these companies, and you get a pretty quick turnaround time, 1 to 2 weeks. The big disadvantage with EEG is that EEG by itself is a pretty useless technology. If you actually recorded somebody's EEG, all you get is these squiggly lines, and it doesn't really mean anything. It's just really, really noisy data. Most of what you're recording is actually randomness, just noise from it recording itself, it recording the outside environment, recording brain activity that has nothing to do, or muscle activity that has nothing to do with what we're testing. So it takes a lot of processing of this data, a lot of complicated analysis and rejection of eye blinks and things like that for us to really get good data out of this. And so that's why it takes, unlike the other metrics where you might be able to get something right out of the box or fairly quickly, something that makes a lot of sense, this is something that doesn't make a lot of through a lot of testing. Right. So what we do, we operate in a bit of a different model. We're not really a neuromarketing firm, but we're a technology company. We provide our research partners, like L&E Research, with software and hardware for running these studies. So they're equipped to run these studies on their own, and we provide the technology. When EEG, they run the EEG data collection, and we get all the data. And we have smart guys like Morgan and Jeroen here that take this data and go through that complicated analysis process that I discussed earlier. And so basically going through second by second and extracting the meaningful data, getting at that prefrontal asymmetry measure in a way that makes sense. Within 24 hours of completing data collection, we put all our results up on an online dashboard available to the client. You can password restrict the password so that multiple clients can access different things. This, for example, I'll show you in a minute what this looks like. But if it's a commercial, you'll get the second-by-second graph showing their emotional response over time. Also, we can look at attention, looking at their visual cortex, and see how activated that is, and then compare different 30-second ads if you're 60-second ads. Whatever you're testing, we can do comparisons for the average of the ad, or we can do these second-by-second metrics. So now we'll get into some case studies, things we've done recently in the past year that are pretty interesting. We worked a bit with Porsche. We did basically an audit of their existing advertising and said, what are the things that work, what are the things that are struggling? And so we tested 6 of their most popular ads, and we said, let's look at the second-by-second data and see what we find. An interesting finding is that we looked at all the peaks, basically the most emotionally approachful scenes in the entire commercial set that we were looking at. And they had one thing in common, they're all first-person perspective. So you were always with the car, in the car, moving with the car. So you have actually inside the vehicle, moving alongside of it, and it's really interesting. So basically what we found is people want to be in the car. They want to be moving with the car. They want to feel like they're the driver. And these other scenes, which are far more popular and far more common in car commercials, is just fast cars driving past you. And it doesn't really matter. It's almost like, that's not me. That's somebody else driving a nice car. Why do I care that he's driving fast past me or driving fast away from me? I want to be the one driving the car. I want to feel like I'm the one driving the car. And so those are the scenes that were actually linked to more approach. And people that saw these first-person scenes were more likely to want to buy that car than people that just saw scenes of, the car driving away from you. And it makes sense, right? When you're at the lot and you're sitting in the car, those are the moments that make you want to own that car. And it's not seeing somebody drive it past you on the street. Another really interesting test we did with Porsche later on was, they said, we have really 2 markets. we have Porsche owners, which are very popular or a very powerful market for us, because Porsche owners tend to own 3 or 4 Porsches over the course of their life. So we have to retain that kind of loyalty, that brand loyalty. We have to appease them because they're our ambassadors, and they're going to buy a lot of cars and they're customers. But then we also want to expand the brand on this other hand. So we want to target this outside market. They are in the market for a luxury car. They can afford a luxury car, but they're not buying Porsches right now. So how do we capture more of that while still maintaining our brand for, these diehard Porsche fans? And what we found is that they have very different responses to different kinds of messaging, these owners and non-owners. And one of the most surprising and interesting was any kind of green, environmentally friendly messaging was really pissing Porsche owners off. They do not want to hear that their car has significantly reduced CO2 emissions. This is actually the emotional approach response of Porsche owners when they hear significantly reduced CO2 emissions drops off. Non-owner, slight boost, it's like, great, good for the environment, higher miles to the gallon, all that. But Porsche owners have this belief that you cannot have a sports car and have it be environmentally friendly. They want to protect the brand. They want to drive a muscle car. They don't want it to be a Prius. And they didn't spend $120,000 to buy a Prius. They want this powerful vehicle. So that was an interesting finding. We found that for a couple other pieces of dialogue. We did a little bit of work with MGD. They had a pretty common task, which is we have a 30-second ad. Let's make it a 15-second ad and put it in different time slots. And so they wanted to look at the ad and say, what are the key moments that we need to include? And so after testing the ad, we found, you have a great 15-second ad already. The problem is that you add another 15 seconds to it that nobody cares about. So you have this, I wish I could show it, but it's this great scene where you're just showing the city light up. The city's basically being lit up by Miller, and it peaks. The music peaks. The whole scene peaks. You come through these club doors, and everybody's partying and they're drinking MGD, and it peaks right there. And then it goes on 15 seconds as you go through more city streets, and then you zoom out, and then you get to the brand. And by the time you actually show the brand towards the end, people have checked out. They're done. And so you have this huge blown opportunity because you had people all the way up here. You had people all this approach, all this, this is really exciting. This is something I want. And then it just trailed off, and you didn't show them. So by the time you actually showed them the brand, they were checked out of the ad. So we got them to cut that down. It was actually a very successful spot for them. Kio is a beer you probably aren't familiar with. It's a very popular beer in Eastern Europe. They had some market research came back for them, and it was a little bit of good news and bad news. The good news is that in certain demographics, they were market leaders. They were number one, 30% market share. The problem was that demographic was 55 years and up. So basically, they're drinkers. I think life expectancy in there is about 75. So basically, their drinkers were dying, and they needed a strategy. Literally, they needed a strategy to capture some of the younger market and bring them into the fold. And so they said, well, let's look at what our beer label looks like, and it's this one right here. And as you can see, it's just the most standard, stereotypical crest, and it just looks like a beer label. And it wasn't really interesting to anybody. So we tested that, and we tested over a dozen other designs, just a smattering of what some of them look like. And what we found here was that this label, this very clean, very basic, very flat design is what really sparked both the emotional response in under 40 demographics and over 40. So it's interesting. We expected there to be a bit of a difference, but we found this label that really resonated with both of them very well. And they actually switched to this label. And the company's based in Cyprus. They were only the company in Cyprus last year to actually have growth during the financial crash. They did really well. They were able to really improve market share in this demographic. And it makes sense to me. I think I would rather drink that than that. So the final case study, this is an interesting Super Bowl test we did in association with McKinney advertising agency in Durham. So we had these two car companies that are in the relatively same space, Suzuki and Kia, lower price Asian automobiles, targeting the same general demographics, and they both ran Super Bowl spots. Now, doing advertising effectiveness testing is very, very difficult because obviously there's all these market forces, there's all these changes, and it's very difficult to do a real experiment where you see exactly what the effect of a given advertisement was. The Super Bowl is really nice because it provides us with that natural experiment because you have almost everybody in the country seeing the same set of ads at the same time, and then you can track activity in the weeks and months that follow. And so you have your best chance at really capturing what ads do what. And so we wanted to look at Kia and Suzuki, and Kia won every single measurement of Super Bowl ad scores. I mean, everybody said Kia's ad was the best. It was the most popular. It had the most retweets and the most Facebook shares, and people loved this ad. And when we did our testing, we got this really shocking result, and that's that Kia ad didn't do so well compared to the Suzuki ad. And it really worried us. We said something might be wrong with what we're doing if this is the case. I mean, Kia ad was clearly better. Everybody says it's more entertaining. Why did we get this result? McKinney, in fact, said, well, your measures can't be real if this is the case. So we went back and we said, well, does popularity really have anything to do with sales? So let's look at the ad. I said, our initial theory was, okay, maybe Suzuki was higher overall, but the things that made it higher had nothing to do with the brand. That was a good theory, that they were higher because it was a cute ad or something, but it didn't drive popularity because nobody really knew who it was for. Unfortunately, we found that Suzuki actually did a great job of linking its approach scores to the brand. Whereas Kia had the opposite effect. So Kia, people thought it was a great ad, cute ad, but its approach scores had nothing to do with the end thing. So when you actually show the brand image at the end, you were at an all-time low. The lowest point in the ad is when they actually showed the Kia Optima. And so we said, well, that's interesting. Let's look at the sales data. So you see here is the ad airs right here, end of January, February 5th. This is where, and this is total monthly sales. So it airs at the beginning of February. Kia is doing pretty well, right? Kia is a good company, and this is their sales over the year, month to month, compared to the previous year. What you see here, though, is that Suzuki actually jumps all the way from here, all the way up to here. So the Suzuki had over 100% change in sales in the 4 weeks following the air of their ad, whereas Kia had barely an uptick in sales. So even though Kia is a more popular brand overall and their cars were doing better, Suzuki had this huge uptick, over 100% uptick from that commercial alone. So even though Kia had the more popular ad, Suzuki's ad actually drove changes in sales to a much higher extent than anything that Kia did. So this is a really enlightening experiment that showed that, as far as we can tell, our metrics are still better predictors of sales effectiveness if you look at it in relative terms than just popularity of the ad. So that's what I have. I'd like to do a quick demo to show you exactly what a neuromarketing experiment would look like. Which one of you guys is going to be my volunteer? Morgan, your head stretches out the headset, so it's probably going to be your ring.
All right. Where do I sit?
Right here. Sure. Magic show.
Did y'all all go to Duke?
Yeah.
Not me.
Well, Morgan did, I did, he went to University of Amsterdam. He just moved here, actually. He moved to North Carolina from Amsterdam about 2 months ago.
Welcome.
So just to really give you an idea of how simple it is. You have somebody shows up for their study. You put the headset on them, like this. Make a few adjustments, make sure it's in the right place.
Don't put that here.
Not only. Ready to go? Select the experiment. Say we're going to run test with Disney. Want to check brain activity so you can actually track the second-by-second brain activity measures. If you want to clench your jaw a little bit, Jeroen, you can kind of see what happens there. You can track emotion, attendance scores. These are just estimates they go through later post-processing. What we'll do is we'll start the experiment. We'll call you Connor Davis today. Again. actual test we did with Disney. That's going to end. We're going to go over, and all the results will then be on the NeuroSpire dashboard. So within 24 hours of completing a study, you'll have your results up here, and you can track these second-by-second changes. You look through here. You can see where the high points are, where the low points are, and then you get an automatic printout of where all the lights. So if you want to see this emotion point is the highest one, you can keep clicking on that, see where it's at. Attention is high here. Attention is low here. If you wanted to look at other ads that you tested, you could look at this, compare their average score over here, and compare their second-by-second scores down here. Just really gives you a full diagnostic of the ad, then you can go back, analyze that, figure out what the trends are, what the patterns are, and make evaluations, judgments, and set up different kinds of experiments. Go from there. And it's as easy as that. All right, so do we want to open it up for questions, Charlene? Did you want to take the chat questions first?
Absolutely. Do we have any chat questions? We do not have any currently. Okay. Actually, one question. Do you have any other studies that you might be able to share with us that involve something other than, like, for example, ads or a marketing stimuli like that? Do you have any other recent questions or studies that you can do?
Well, the packaging study that we ran was one example of a packaging thing. We've done mobile app testing. We actually had people walk through different stages of a mobile app to see where emotional response was really dropping off. Payment stage ends up being where people have the lowest emotional response. But we found that there's actually a way to mitigate that by spreading the payment out. So you'd ask people for their information in different stages rather than all at once. When people got to a payment screen and all of a sudden they had to do name, credit card, billing address, and all this other stuff, people really checked out, and people were more likely to leave that, and their emotional scores went way off. But if you asked them for their name, showed a fun little animation, then you got their address later on, then you got their credit card later on, basically spread out that pain, it seemed to have a much higher emotional engagement and less of a drop-off. And then, as far as just recent stuff we've done, we do a lot of stuff with EEG software, not just neuromarketing. And just yesterday, I got back from working with the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit at Fort Benning, Georgia. We were actually doing brain training exercises, and what we did is we measured them while they completed a marksmanship match. So they would actually shoot 60 shots at the target while wearing an EEG headset. And we recorded their brain activity for each shot, and then we got the exact score for each shot. So what we're going back and doing now is seeing what does their brain look like right before a great shot, right before a poor shot, and be able to match up different brain patterns with different shooting behaviors so that we can eventually train them to basically get into a mindset that leads to better shooting performance. And then earlier this week, we actually met with the head of Angry Birds out in Denver to discuss ways that we could integrate our technology with children's games to improve the attention focus in children by looking at different brain activity while children play games and help them train certain brain patterns to help kids with ADHD or other attention issues. There's a lot of cool stuff.
My mind is blown. I have a question. Where have you seen the most success with this, as far as marketing goes, whether it be TV spots, print, packaging? Is there a field that you really see this is like a number one?
The most evidence, right, in the scientific literature happens to be for print ads and packaging design. A big part of that is that those seem to be the things that people have instantaneous responses to, and that are the least likely to be able to describe. When you see a billboard or a print ad, it's very hard to get your thoughts across, but you have an instantaneous reaction to it. Same with packaging design. Commercials can be a little more complicated. We still do commercials, but that requires more interpretation on the behalf of the researcher because commercials tend to tell a story. And you're not gonna, if you're telling a story, it's not always gonna be, this happy line all at the top. So the highest average score necessarily isn't the best commercial. So it just is a bit more fine tuning. But it's good as a diagnostic, but maybe not so much as a predictor of effectiveness. Whereas with the print ads and the packaging designs, that really reflects your real world decision making because you see something, you form an impression, and you make a decision. And a lot of scientific literature has shown that showing people packaging designs you can predict purchase decisions by looking at that prefrontal asymmetry. Yes.
I got a bunch of questions, but
Go right ahead. Sorry, sit down.
So if L&E set up to do it, you guys would come in and train the staff on how to use the technology.
Yes.
Do you do one person at a time? Can you do a group of people at a time?
We do one person at a time. We can do up to 2 or 3, but they have to be in different rooms so that we don't get, crosstalk between
Sure.
EEG devices. And depending on the study, it usually doesn't last more than 15 to 30 minutes. So we end up being able to do, 10 to 20 subjects a day.
Okay. And how long from the time, let's say the study's on a Tuesday, how long does it take you guys to go through all the data and then get results back to us?
We'll have
back
the
to
results
client?
up, depending on when we finish on Tuesday, we'll have results up either by the end of the day Wednesday or the morning of Thursday. We'll be on that dashboard, and then we'll write up a summary that kind of just summarizes the data, and that'll be within 3 to 7 days from that dashboard. But you'll have access to that right away.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, we will go ahead and have our drawings done. I'm just gonna grab those
Yes.
entries and we'll go ahead and get, yes, please keep on the
Yeah.
questions if you have them.
It doesn't have to be neuromarketing related if you just,
Well, some of our clients right now are having conversations about potential logo redesign down the road.
yes, that's a big
And
one.
I just feel like after watching that, because it's up in the air, with what would you call it, self-reporting?
Yes,
People could lie.
yeah,
Or
and
say,
people
"Oh,
just
that's a
don't
nice
know.
logo," or,
Yeah.
they don't really have like a strong opinion either way, but that is on the table fact.
Exactly. Yeah, logo design is a great
Really
application.
cool.
You do get people that give you a very recorded or a very particular response sometimes in focus groups, and you see clients say, sometimes you feel like they're like a professional, but this way, there's no way around it.
Exactly.
It's just an honest reaction to what you're seeing, so you get a better idea of, I like the whole idea of cutting commercials down to 15 seconds
Yeah.
of greatness, rather than, because I remember those commercials from the Super Bowl, you get to the end,
Yeah.
you don't remember what the car was,
Yeah,
you remember the commercial was great, but then focusing on like the great part of it to get people in, really, really cool. I mean, it really is cool.
Thank you.
I knew you guys would be fascinated. I find this topic so interesting, and Jake is amazing. So we will go ahead and have our drawing then. So we're going to have 2 drawings. The first one, we'll go ahead and have our drawing for those that are here in person. So, we'll say hi for us taller people in the room, okay? So Addison Profit. Yay! And we have your gift card. I will hand that to you in just a moment. And Kate's going to go grab the other drawing box, and we're going to pick one out for all of you who are watching via video streaming.
Guys, I never win
So,
anything.
yay! And Addison was so precious that when you came in here, she was like, "Oh, can we keep these notepads too?" I love it. Okay, one more drawing, and this is again is for those that are watching via video streaming. Okay. Oops, wait a minute. That's 2 accidentally. Beth Priest. Congratulations, Beth Priest. So Addison, congratulations. Beth, congratulations. Beth, we will get you yours in the mail. So anyway, this concludes our workshop on neuromarketing. I hope that you all enjoyed it half as much as we did. We thought it was a lot of fun. And again, thank you so much, Jake, and your team. Thank you so much, Urim, and we thank you so much, Morgan, for being here. And anyway, have a great afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
I really like it.